When I was in middle school and high school, I was a pretty avid reader. I read a lot of the super popular YA novels like the Hunger Games series, The Fault in Our Stars, Twilight. And reading for me was one of my main hobbies. When I got to college, I did quite a bit of reading from my degree. I was an English major and I was regularly assigned multiple novels to read over the course of a semester, on top of other coursework that wasn't really related to my degree. And while I don't think I was necessarily burnt out from school or from my coursework, reading for education definitely took priority over reading for pleasure. Also, I was older and the YA novels that I loved for so long just didn't appeal to me as much anymore. And so for the last few years, I knew that I wanted to get back into reading, but I felt kind of stuck because I didn't really know what I liked to read as an adult. I'm grateful to creators online who've created communities surrounding books. I've gotten a lot of great recommendations that way. And seeing what other people are reading, people around my age, it's really just given me a lot of great starting points to just dive back in. And so I feel like this past year, I've really gotten a much better understanding of what I like to read now at this age. In 2025, I got back into reading for pleasure, and these are my 5 favorite reads of the year. These aren't ranked in any particular way. I'm just going to go in the order that I read them. The first novel I want to talk about is Daughter by Claudia Dey. You've probably already seen this if you're into literary fiction. Daughter is about a young writer named Mona. She is the daughter of a previously critically acclaimed author named Paul. Paul manages to pull Mona into his personal affairs, and even though his actions are to blame for the family's fallout, Mona is blamed and Paul takes no accountability. What I appreciated about this is that there were many obvious, easy routes that Claudia Dey could have taken this plot, but she always refrained from making convenient plot choices. Specifically with Mona's relationship with her boyfriend, I was kind of expecting the author to create the most obvious conflict possible. A lot of writers would have, but I'm glad that she didn't. Dey does an excellent job of conveying the desperation a child can feel to connect with their parent, even if that connection requires the erosion of their personal values. I also thought she did a wonderful job of illustrating the kind of rhetoric that someone can use to manipulate their loved ones. Self-victimization, downplaying their actions, justifying their actions by saying that they were motivated by love. But above all, self-victimization, it gets really frustrating at times. I read Bonjour Tristesse later on in the year, and the father in that book reminds me a lot of the father in Daughter. But I loved experiencing the inner workings of this family. This is a novel that made me realize that I liked literary fiction. The next book I want to talk about is Foster by Keegan. This book is perfectly tender. It's about a young girl sent to live with her relatives, the Kinsellas, for the summer. The girl's family is struggling financially, and the reader can infer that she's staying with these distant relatives to take a little financial pressure off of her parents. This novella is short but poignant. Months after finishing this book, I still think about the Kinsellas. The young narrator experiences not just being cared for physically, but being cared for emotionally as well, in a way you might assume that she's never experienced before. She helps take care of the home, she goes on errands and walks with these relatives. The feeling of peace that the narrator felt reminded me a lot of when I visit my grandparents and I just get the most incredible sleep. My grandfather likes to grow a lot of their fruit. My grandmother likes to visit secondhand stores and go on walks. Keegan has mastered brevity without compromising depth. If you're looking for a short read, this is the first one I'd recommend. This is Abigail by Magda. Szabó. This is my favorite book of 2025. It's about a teenage girl named Gina living in Hungary during World War II. Her father is a general in the Hungarian military, and the two of them have a very close relationship. They can look at each other's expressions and completely read into what the other isn't saying. And so Gina is completely blindsided when her father very suddenly enrolls her in a strict, religious, all-girls boarding school outside of Budapest where they live. Gina can't make sense of it, and in refusing to accept that this boarding school is her new home, she humiliates herself and offends the other students by acting out. Despite all that, I really love Gina. It's clear that she's deeply intelligent, but her preoccupation with her own problems keeps her from seeing the bigger picture. The novel is called Abigail because Abigail is the name that the students give to a stone statue on campus. There's a school legend that if any of the girls are in trouble or have a problem, they can write a note to Abigail, leave it on the statue, and Abigail will fix the problem. Gina, being the worldly, sophisticated girl that she is, of course thinks that this is stupid. That is, of course, until she needs Abigail. I'll never get over Szabó's depiction of girlhood. The seriousness of participating in class games, the honor of keeping another girl's secret, the risk the girls will take to help each other, the way that students create their own disciplinary structure amongst themselves within a highly disciplined, structured school environment. It was emotional, it was funny, it was heartbreaking. I actually laughed and cried while reading this. It is a bit slow at times, but it was well worth the time that I spent reading it. I plan to read much more of Magda Szabó's work. Our Spoons Came from Woolworths by Barbara Comyns is about a young woman named Sophia. She's in her 20s and living in London during the Great Depression. She marries a man named Charles early on in the novel, and their union is far from ideal. Charles behaves more like an adolescent son than like a husband. He leaves all of the domestic and financial responsibilities on Sophia so that he can pursue his art. Sophia is naive and struggles to keep the household afloat. The novel follows the ups and downs of Sophia's marriage, her career, and her belief in what's possible for her life. Despite enduring many tragedies, Sophia's story is also quite funny. I read The Vet's Daughter by Barbara Comyns as well, and both narrators have an objective, unsentimental view of the events that they recall. That objective narration lends itself so well to the deadpan humor that Comyns is so excellent at writing. I mentioned in a short form review of this book that I really appreciate that Barbara Comyns doesn't feel the need to end all of her chapters with cliffhangers. She isn't begging for your attention, and she trusts that the reader has enough of an attention span to continue reading for reasons other than shock value. I think many readers will find Sophia relatable. I think that this would make a great book club pick, or if you're just trying to get into reading lesser known classics, this is a great place to start. This is an enduring classic. The last novel I want to mention is The Stepdaughter by Caroline Blackwood. I think that this is Blackwood's first novel, and it made me so excited to read more of her work. It's told from the perspective of a woman who simply refers to herself as J, the letter J. J is writing letters to an anonymous recipient, but she never sends them. She's living in a New York City apartment with her preschool-age daughter and her 13-year-old stepdaughter, Renata. Jay's husband has gone to Paris and has sent her word that it's over between them. She details her growing hatred for Renata, sparing no detail about how unlikable and overweight she is. Jay has self-awareness, though. She knows that she should be nicer to Renata, but she never brings herself to actually do it. It's like she's procrastinating. And now that Jay's husband, Renata's father, has left the country, is Jay supposed to care for Renata by herself? Caroline Blackwood expertly creates this feeling of Jay being trapped in her apartment, doomed to only have this uninteresting, ugly girl as her company. Jay's hatred for Renata reaches a boiling point, and similarly to Barbara Comyns and Claudia Dey, I appreciate that Caroline Blackwood didn't choose the most obvious routes that this story could have taken. While I do wish that the tension Caroline Blackwood built up could have been used more effectively in the end, the writing was just so good, so funny, so descriptive that it just made me want to read everything that she's published. Despite being dark, this book was absolutely hilarious. And so yeah. So those are my 5 favorite novels of 2025. I highly recommend all of these. And as always, I hope that you enjoyed hanging out with me. I would love to know what your favorite books of 2025 were. They could be fiction, they could be nonfiction. I would love to hear about either one. I also hope that you sign up for my monthly newsletter. You can sign up for that at housegustav.com, where I talk about monthly favorites. I also just kind of talk about my business and whatever's going on with me. It's a good time over there. It's a good hang. But as always, I hope that you have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.